Hello, hello, hello. Welcome again to Cooking with Scrippy. I'm going to be making up a chicken and rutabaga pot pie. I'm also going to be doing a coffee roast. I did this a few weeks ago. It was really good. Thought of a couple ideas to improve it. I'm going to put them into practice this week. Also doing some mini frittatas and hopefully some mashed potatoes and roasted vegetables to go with that roast. So we're going to start with the thing that takes forever, which is the roast. Using a chuck roast, your choice of cuts of meat that aren't really expensive is a good one. Basically, we're going to cook this until it's tender, however many hours that takes, and then we're going to serve with vegetables. So I'll start with pulling it out. This is just for myself, and this is going to be 4 meals, so this is like a 2-pound roast. If you wanted more, you could obviously go higher. Basically, we're going to brown all the sides of it in the pan, add some coffee and stock, and then let it simmer for 2-3 hours until it's done. So, bowl. Grabbing a little bowl because this way, when I mix the salt and pepper, I can reach back in without cross-contamination. If you don't care about that, use whatever you want. Some pepper. Salt. Mix this up. And pretty liberally coat both sides here. Okay. See, I can move this just a tiny tad. There we go. Hopefully you can see it a tiny bit better. Oil in the pan. Come on, there we go. You're going to let the pan get a little warm. And we're going to put it in basically 3 minutes aside to brown. Then we're going to add the coffee, the stock, the onion, all the good things. Now a little warmer still. Having a nice cast iron pan is great because it keeps heat and does really great with searing. On the other hand, it takes forever to warm up because there's so much volume to heat up. Grab up the next couple. Okay, that's pretty hot. I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes. Um, not going to cover it, but I'm not going to touch it for those whole 5 minutes. And well, as we rotate it through, I've got a couple other ingredients. I'm going to get them all ready so that we can just drop them in when it's time. Okay. Go heavy on the garlic. Why not? Basically, we're going to mince up all this garlic and then dice up all the onion. It's going to make it all the way through to the end, and it's going to be in the gravy that we make, so you don't want it too huge. them over. Oh, yeah. A rutabaga is kind of like the unholy stepchild of a turnip and a potato. It's kind of yellow on the inside. You could totally use potatoes instead, but rutabaga is an interesting vegetable, so I'm going to use it. Okay, got 2 minutes left on that side. Gonna grab a plate here so that way I can pull this out and throw the onions and garlic in to get them a little bit fried up before I add the rest of your liquids. The liquids are 50-50 coffee and stock. I was really good and remembered to make extra coffee this morning, so I don't have to brew a pot right now. Rosemary. I made a 12-cup pot and I drank all but about a cup of it, so yeah, lots of coffee. All right. Just a couple more seconds. And the reason we're starting with this is because it takes forever, so you start with the longest thing. Got some color on it. Onion in first. As you can hear, I'm keeping it up pretty high. The water coming off the onions actually taking the browning off the bottom of the pan. Okay, garlic. garlic is very much one of those things that's personal taste. I like garlic, so a lot goes in. Coffee. And some chicken stock. You could use beef stock. I'm using chicken stock because our other recipe also calls for chicken stock. So why open 2 jars when I can open 1? And I'm going to want 1 and 1. So let's see, do I have 8 ounces of coffee left? Just barely. And then 8 ounces of chicken. Basically all I'm doing is waiting for the garlic to not be raw, and then I'll add in our liquid. Do this in a couple little pieces. I'm going to try and get everything off the bottom of the pan here. Okay. Rest of our coffee. Take our roast. Slide it in. Now the liquid doesn't come all the way up to the top of it, but it comes up most of the way up the sides. If after an hour you want to, you can flip it back over. You're really just cooking this until it starts to fall apart. So in my case, you can turn on the back burner, put the lid on it, grab some pot holders because I know this is hot. Move it back. So next we're going to start the chicken for the pot pie. Basically, it's cook up the chicken in the pot, add the rutabagas, a pile of red wine, some chicken stock, onions, carrots, and then we're going to let it sit for about 40 minutes and simmer. Pull out the chicken thighs, shred them, put the meat back in, make a lid, put it in the oven, and it'll be good. So I'm going to actually have to pull up the recipe because I am not perfect here. So we're going to start with the chicken. These are bone-in, skin-on chicken thighs, not boneless. This is good because the flavor from the skin and the bones will leach into the rest of the sauce, which makes it taste better. Also, they're cheaper. So basically, pan, medium-high heat, little oil, skin side down for a few minutes. While we prep everything else up. Lid on these guys. Start with the vegetables. I'm going to need a pan for that. Grab a bowl to put these in when they're done. Start with the rutabaga. Rutabaga looks like this. If you go to a grocery store and buy it, it'll be covered in like wax. It should just peel off with a peeler, and then we're just going to dice it. And 4 cups is one that's pretty big. Let's just do this on the table. Okay. That little notch I'll just cut out with a knife. And just so you know, I have no magical secrets on how to pick a rutabaga. I just went for one at the grocery store that looked like it was about 4 cups. It's definitely the man covering it in wax. They say that if they're covered in wax, they're actually good all winter. So, and it's like candle wax. It's not nature wax. And it actually smells kind of like a turnip. It's bubbling. Okay. Now, since this is going to end up eventually in your mouth, you want to think bite-sized pieces. And if you go to the grocery store, this rutabaga was almost 2 pounds. If you really don't have access to rutabaga, you could totally use potato. It's not the end of the world. Or turnip, actually. Starting to simmer nicely. More skin. Actually, this is a little more than I need, so these last 3 slices I'm going to leave behind and use them when we get around to making mashed potatoes. So on top of the rutabaga, we're going to need some carrots and onions. And celery. Carrots. One. 2. Hi, kitty. 3. Not quite there yet. If you notice I do the onion last always, that's because if I get a batch of bad onions, that makes me want to cry. I don't want them sitting out in a bowl, irritating my eyes for the next 20 minutes. Okay. There's them. Couple ribs of celery. We're gonna use 3, not 2. Taste of these, I'm gonna take off this bottom piece. Doesn't taste amazing. I've got tons of celery. Pick up these little side pieces, same reason. Okay. They're still going nicely. Let's add an onion. 2. What am I saying I'm adding? 2. And I will toss this in and start working on the spices. Those onions are much harder. I've actually had apples with thinner skins than this onion. Okay. Oop, popular. Okay. I'll let that cook for about 10 to 15 minutes until the onions get nice and translucent, and we're going to work on adding all the rest of the spices and things to it right now. Let's see. Oh, let's do the salt and pepper. Nope. Right, put it that way. Now, as you guys notice, that's pretty classic French. I mean, carrots, onions, okay, so I'm not using potatoes, but celery's in there. Trying to work all the chicken up, work some more vegetables onto the bottom. Oh, nearly forgot. When I put the stock in, I didn't put the rosemary in with the roast. Be missing something vital. Clean up some of this stuff. later. So we're going to add, once these have cooked for probably 10 minutes or so, I want to start to get like translucent color. You know, the celery's getting that really dark green. 2 cups of red wine, same amount of chicken stock. The rest of the wine is going to go in the cook. You know, the usual things. So let me make sure this, you know, wine doesn't suck. Come on. Well, as a bottle of wine only has 3 cups in it, it's going to be hard after a little while. Now, and just like before, I'm using a dark red wine. If you used a whiter wine, it would have a lighter color when you're all done. But I think that really dark red color looks pretty cool in a pot pie, so that's what we're going to use. Let's see, what else do I need? Okay, well, stir these up. You know, as the onion softens, this is already starting to like shrink in volume in here, which is good. Okay. Measure out that red wine for the chef, and then that red wine for the me. I don't know, where's my glass? Start with the red wine for the me. Yeah. Ooh, that's pretty good. It's also strong. Wow. Okay, so 2 cups. It is Apothic Inferno. It was aged in whiskey barrels, and it is 17% alcohol. So it's, I'm going with strong is the right word for it. It's a really dark red. All right. Those guys are all nice and heated through now. Stir this around one more time. You can actually see there's some, actually I don't know if you can see it, but there is some liquid at the bottom of the pan, which is great. Means that everyone's starting to release their moisture, which means they're cooking. So step 1 is the red wine, and then I'm going to give it a couple minutes. That should get any alcohol maybe out. I don't know. We'll see. Also should give you an idea of the color of your final dish. Right now I'm not sure you quite want it yet. I don't know if rutabaga is actually edible raw. It might not be. I'll measure out the chicken stock while I'm at it. Add the last couple other ingredients, and then that also simmers for 40 to 50 minutes. Basically, our goal is going to be to make it fall apart tender. On our list of other ingredients, we do have dates, so I'm going to pull out some. This many looks like half a cup. It's a knife that I'm gonna not worry about. These are already pitted. I would definitely go for ones that are already pitted. Seems like a lot of work for not a lot of gain to get them unpitted. And I think sometimes you can get these like pre-minced and ready for you. I didn't see them at the grocery store, so I didn't. Oh, that one still has its pit in it. Oh, not using that. Okay, it's got its pit in the middle too. Oop. Maybe these are just theoretically de-pitted dates. There's a lot of pits in here. Run the knife through these a couple times, make them a little smaller. Okay, that's a hard piece. Stir these all in. So the smell of the liquid is starting to change a little bit, so I think it's almost time for the chicken stock. Yeah, let's see what else do I want to put in here. Need some thyme and rosemary. Rosemary. Thyme. Couple bay leaves. Add this rosemary and thyme. Oh, that's not gonna work. rosemary. Could definitely use fresh if you had fresh. I don't have fresh. If you use fresh and you use them like say in a bundle, take the bundle back out when you're all done. You're using them fresh and they're off the sprig already, then just throw them in. And as usual, volumetrically, you want a lot more fresh herbs than dried herbs. They're a lot more concentrated when they're dried. 2 bay leaves. The chicken stock here. So I don't overflow the pan. Okay, stir this just a little bit. In. Get under things. I'm gonna put the lid on this, and it's gonna go for about 40 minutes. Okay, get that out of my way. Get these guys out of my way. So next is going to be something that we made last week. We're going to make frittatas again. They went over really well. I enjoyed them every day for breakfast, so I'm going to make more. Just like everything else, start with frying pan. If you had a bigger stove than I do, these pans would all fit. I don't, so I've got to think about the fact that I'm now off center. We've got onion, get some bacon out. Sadly, I did not make it to the farmer's market, so have to use bacon from the store. It's 8 ounces of bacon, 5 breakfast frittatas, seems about right. Bacon in. Yeah, I'll reuse this. Start that frying. And it's probably going to take about 10 minutes for them to get as crispy as I want them. Then I'm going to add an onion, because as soon as you add that onion, nothing's going to get any crispier. I'm going to grab a couple of potatoes. 3 little potatoes. Washed and ready. Okay. Slice up this onion. Okay. Now, if you notice, compared to, yeah, they are, first, they are pretty impressively red. They are fresh from the grocery store, and it's definitely also because I just washed them. I don't have the fancy cameras that would make them glow. Okay. These to the side. Now, for me, I'm not going to peel these because the skin's where all the good is. You can peel them, doesn't end the world. Cook that just a little bit. Now again, compared to what I was making earlier, these are thin to small slices because my final size of dish is like 3 inches across. So giant pieces of vegetables don't really go very well. Okay. 2 is going to be good enough. Let bacon go for another 30 seconds. Okay. Close. Yeah. It's important to make sure your bacon cooks enough because that's where all the fat comes out, which goes in for all the other ingredients. So don't rush it. Basically where I want it, so I'm going to start adding the onions. I'm going to give the onions about a minute and then I'm going to add the potatoes. Okay. Potatoes in. So these will cook for a few minutes. Once the stuff is all done, I'm going to grab out actually a pan, some small mini fruit tart dishes. I'm going to lay them all out and toss them in the oven. So actually right now I can start preheating the oven. Put it on to 400. Not too hot, but you want it to cook them fairly quickly. have 6 of these little guys. These are silicone, so that way like things don't stick. A couple drops of oil in each. More than a couple. Oh, we're gonna pour the excess in the other ones. Make sure you get all the way up the sides. I learned my lesson last week. I didn't. It didn't work very well. And the bacon and potatoes have a little bit of their own oil, but I want to make sure I get a solid covering. Nothing worse than stuff sticking. While the potatoes are starting to get translucent, give them a couple more minutes. I'll poke them with the fork, see if they're done, and then transfer them into the dish here. Alright. Actually, let me stir. There it is. Just a little bit here. So it's really dark red. I mean, this is like, well, a wine sauce. Fork. Alright, these are basically ready. I'm going to give them one more minute. Now they will cook a little more in the ramekins in the oven, so like they don't need to be perfectly cooked, just most of the way cooked. Actually, I'll just prep up the eggs, and when the eggs are ready, these will be ready. Now, apples and bacon and eggs go actually together pretty well, so I could have used, I guess, apples, although some apples. Since I've got 6 of these, I'm going to start with all 8 of these eggs, and if I need to, get in the other dozen. Yes, truckload of cinnamon, a little cayenne. You could totally make this with the chickpea flour and I guess probably mushrooms instead of bacon. The mushrooms would work pretty well. If I'm using a meat substitute, mushrooms are generally my favorite. I think they work the best. Ooh, yeah, soaked in beer. Well, I get fresh mushrooms most of the time, but yeah, if I was rehydrating them, beer is a great way to do it. I live in the land of mushrooms. So step 1 is to move these into that, and then after that we'll add in, oh, it's preheated, look at that. Add in some eggs on the top. And I mean, I've made this before. You could always just add all the eggs to this if you were going for one big pan. As I'm bringing these in for lunches on a bunch of days, a bunch of small pans is just as easy. And then I don't have to cut up and deal with chunks of one at work in the morning. Pieces. Get this pan out of my way. flat. Just trying to flatten these out because it'll help it all cook more evenly. As everything settles, I'll probably have to go back around. Let's see which one's least full. This one's least full. So 8's a good number. 400-degree oven, 15-ish minutes. You don't want these to jiggle. You want them to be fully cooked through. Okay. So both of those are in. I'm going to actually pull the chicken out of that dish. If it's cooked all the way through, I'm going to pull it out to cool it down enough that I can actually peel it off. I'm going to let the vegetables continue to cook. I'm going to actually uncover it to let the sauce thicken. And if they're not ready to peel, to pull, then I'm going to let them sit there. I need a plate. Fork. I don't know. These might need a little more time. Let's see. You know what? They're going to get a couple more minutes. Flip them all over. They're getting close, but they're not quite there. No, the pot pie, you could do way, way ahead of time. Like, we could make these into little tiny dishes and put them in the freezer and come back like a month later and bake them. In my case, I'm not doing that because I don't have that much prep in my life. So I'm going to make these, and then it's going to be my lunches this week. Let me actually flip over the roast. It should be pretty... Yeah, it's going. Okay, it's doing its thing. It's only an hour in, and it really needs at least another hour. One of the goals is to not undercook that. So, let's see. Those are all good. I can actually get a pot out here. One of the later dishes I'm going to work on is we're going to do some mashed potatoes for that roast. So I'm going to put some water in the pan here, and then I'm going to start dicing up the potatoes so I'm ready. Okay. Don't spill my wine. Okay, so potatoes. Wash these guys off. Now, with mashed potatoes, depending on who you listen to, I'm either peeling these all the way, not peeling them at all, or doing some. I'm going to peel these about halfway, so just pinstripes. Basically, what I'm doing is you want to have some pieces of that red skin in the final mashed potato because it looks visually appealing. But the texture of skin in mashed potatoes isn't really all that great. You should totally be able to get miso in the Chinese hood. I can't imagine a Chinese hood without miso. I mean, I'm sure it exists, but why? So, okay, dice these guys up. Now remember, you're mashing them, so like, don't really matter. You just want them so they cook. And then in the water so they don't brown. Oh, if you go to the Chinese hood, you should also see if they have the red pepper paste that's really super spicy. It's so good. Spicy is pretty good. There was this variety of it that I saw at H Mart, and it came with plastic gloves to handle it because I guess it was so spicy it would like irritate your skin. So I don't know how spicy that is, but I'm going with very. I've never had something spicy enough to actually irritate my skin just by touching it. Do this potato that I had washed earlier for those mini frittatas but didn't need. Okay, and these can actually just sit here for the minute. I don't really have space for them on the stove. I'll probably change this water out before I put it to boil. This is really starchy. So So let's see, check on these guys, which are getting there but not quite done. Those are not quite done, and that's all good. Move this out of my way. You guys can't see it, but my kitchen table is just covered with stuff from all this cooking. I start out mostly empty and it ends up mostly full. Let's see. So once those come out, I'll pull the chicken, and then maybe we'll do the roasted vegetable after that. Let's see. Nope. I'm still jiggling a little too much. So a roasted vegetable is going to be broccoli, because I went to the store and broccoli looked okay. Going to do it up very similar to what we did last time. Salt, pepper, dried garlic, some oil, 450 until it's crispy. And whatever we do, don't overcrowd the pan. Okay, it's been another minute. Patience is a virtue. Actually, get the butter out for the next step. For our next recipe, we need half a stick of butter to make the top for that. So I'm going to take my half stick, throw it in a little bowl, and I'm just going to stick it by the burner, and it should pretty much melt in the next 15 minutes. It is warm in the kitchen. So there that goes. It's like the microwave, except less work. Okay. Okay, these are all done. One more pot holder. These are obviously hot. So what I'm going to do is 5 of these are going to go in the fridge in a minute once I can touch them. And the 6th one's going to get turned out on a plate and I'm going to eat it now because I'm hungry. It's actually, can I pick you up? This will be my now. I have laters to later. Okay, well, this one's for now. Make sure this is loose. Sprinkle this up with a little cheese. Okay, sprinkle this up with a lot of cheese. Let the cheese melt over there. Okay. See how these are doing. Oh, much better. Give them just one more minute. And then I'll pull them out, set them down. I do not have any cats in my own apartment. I still do some pet sitting, so like I go and visit people and take care of their cats, but I don't have any of my own. It's just like the dogs at work. I don't actually have a dog at work, but I get to go take care of everyone's dog and do all the fun parts of dog and none of the not fun parts of dog. That is Black Bart Roberts. He was a cat from one of the people I pet sat. He loved sitting on shoulders and begging for bacon. Skin. And, well, he sat on my shoulder a lot. So I'm going to leave this lid off now. What I'm doing now is we're going to try and evaporate out some of this liquid. Get back down there. And then when the chicken is cool enough to be picked, we're going to pick it, and then I'll add as much cornstarch and water as I need to thicken this up to a good sauce. The cats were very much loved. They've got an owner that had enough money to pay for a pet sitter to come to their house and sleep with the cats for the time they were gone. The cat, he died last year, but he was like old, like super old, so he... Nothing but old age did him in. Which is the most that all of us can hope for. He probably had more medical care than I've had in my life. So let's just say he had it good. Get this out of my way. So basically all I'm doing right now is I want the chicken to be cold enough for me to actually be able to pick it with a fork. When it's 300 degrees, it hurts when you try and do it. And since I got a minute or two, I'm going to eat up some of my little frittata here. Like with a diced avocado? Yes. If I do this right, like I don't even... Hopefully I can just start pulling and the bones will be ready for a museum without me doing any work. If you wanted to, you could totally, with this, instead of putting cheese on like I did, you could add like salsa and avocados. Or maybe cheese salsa and avocados, I don't know. This is the frittata from before. So this is bacon, potato, eggs, onions, lots of cheese. I just flipped it upside down. Get some cornstarch ready. Not spill the whole bag. I mean, it's good. I'm not sure if it's like the thing I would eat if I was on the eat this one more meal before you die thing. Actually, I'm going to use flour. This is flour and water. I'm going to mix it up here. I'm going to add a lot more water still. That would be, I'm not sure I'd recommend that one either. Mixing this up so it's well blended. I don't want any lumps. Same on this end. I'm stirring rapidly so that it doesn't turn into a funnel cake in the middle. Because I like funnel cake, but not in a pot pie. Alright. This has to get all the way back up to boiling. We'll see if I did it right. This is too thin still. I will add more. Actually, let me, while I'm thinking about it, take out the bay leaves. Because I had forgotten the bay leaves before, and they don't taste really good when you eat them. Don't recommend it. Oh, good. As you can see, this pretty much just picks apart. This is now cool enough. Some of these have really nice dark pieces from the wine. That'll look really good when you go to serve it. Get these 2 forks, it's still pretty hot. This guy's done. 1. And just to give you an idea, this was 2 pounds of chicken-ish. this one is, yeah, it's basically done. Actually, one more meat over here. The last guy. Make sure this is thick. Okay, this is close. I'm actually gonna. I'm gonna actually say that's good enough. So chicken goes back in. Actually turn off the heat. We want this to cool down a little bit. I'm going to make up the topping and transfer this to a big baking dish. And I don't need it to be 400 degrees when I put it in the oven. So stir this together. I'll leave the lid off, let it evaporate just a little more. Let's see. The lid. Okay, so get this out of my way. Now you're going to have to trust me a little bit. I pre-measured a couple ingredients. I have 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 1/4 cup regular flour, and 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. That's just I wanted to do the dry ingredients, and I measured them beforehand because I know that by now I probably have run out of measuring tools. Ooh, that's hot. Push this melted butter forward. I need some melted butter to go with it, and then some buttermilk. So basically I'm going to mix up these dry ingredients. Another clean fork. I want the baking powder obviously spread through the whole thing. Going to do a half cup. I did look at that. This is cultured buttermilk. This is what you buy at the grocery store. If you actually made butter That buttermilk doesn't substitute for the stuff you buy in the grocery store. It's very different. It's really good, but it's not the same thing. Can't touch this yet. Add in my butter. So I'm going to start stirring with a fork. This should thicken up to the point where I need to roll this out. If it doesn't, I just add more flour. Well, that's going to be a problem. I have to appear like an uncultured slob. I'm supposed to use my by now empty wine bottle to roll this out. Problem, still have wine. So I'm going to use another cup. All off, okay. If I had a rolling board, I would use one. I don't. So instead, I'm going to use my counter because there's an apartment in the worst case I just don't get my deposit back. Flour my countertop. Make sure this is all pushed together a little bit. This is actually really wet. Flour. Okay. There we go. I'm going to push it together just a little bit. I want to make sure I'm combined, and then I'm just going to roll it out kind of thin. And as this is my final pan, where am I going to put it? I'll put it here. Here's my brunch. That's the size I'm aiming for. Just give me an idea of size. Okay. Flour my wine bottle. Remember, kids, don't try this at home. Flour. Basically, the goal is something roughly the size and shape of the dish you are using. If you're using something or multiple small dishes, same concept. If you weren't going to cook this right away, I would actually freeze the filling separate from everything else, and then make this the day of. All right, let me... this over, out of my way. Get this out and ready. Step one is get this all in. stir in the chicken just a little more. Okay, spread that out. This side of my way. Spread this all the way out. And guys, make sure you have a big enough pan. Like, don't put this on something where it comes all the way up to the brim, because then as it bubbles out, it'll bubble all over your oven, and then you got to clean your oven, and no one wants to clean an oven. Here comes the fun part. Just trying to figure out how to get this up. This is loose. This is where I recommend a pastry knife that I don't own. Unfold my edge here. If you didn't want to do this, you could totally use like a can of Pop Biscuits and do the same concept. And I'm going to throw it in the oven, 400 degrees, 30 minutes-ish, until it's well cooked through, at which point pop it out and ready to go. Uncovered. Wash my hands and my surface here. Okay. Grab those potatoes. Get these guys started to boil. I would cover them, but I actually broke the lid for that pot, so I can't. And our other final pieces, we're actually going to do up some broccoli. I'll grab those heads out. We'll fluorite them up and then just toss them in on a sheet pan. So here are some beautiful heads of broccoli. knife. So we're just going to floret these. Things that you may not know, you cannot roast frozen broccoli. Don't try. I watched someone do it. It was actually kind of sad. You can steam it, you can use it in all kinds of other dishes. You cannot roast it. I've watched people do that too. That's also pretty sad. It's doubly sad because I actually like to use the gut bag and then make it to make better gravy. I use the giblets in gravy, and that's kind of where they go for me. I haven't cooked with them like on an entree. Let's see, that's the last of the broccoli. If I was an enterprising individual, I would peel these and use these as well, but my pan's already full, so I won't today. So in with this, salt and pepper. Fold it on, okay. A hunk of minced garlic. This is like the freeze-dried variety. It works really well for veggies. I like it at least as much as the fresh stuff in these situations. And then some oil, and I'm going to turn this out in the sheet pan. This is actually my largest sheet pan. I want to give these as much space as possible, even though I think there's not a ton. The less crowded your sheet pan is, the better your broccoli is. This goes with like every vegetable ever. Let's see. Can't see it, I've actually filled my sink to within about 4 inches of the spout and dirty dishes. That's going to be my job all evening after I am done. A little more oil. And actually a touch more salt. And then this will go into the oven for about 15-20 minutes. I want them to be nicely browned, so that way they taste good when they're reheated. If they're not browned, then they don't taste anywhere near as good. Okay, good. That guy is done. I'm gonna finish off my frittata that I started a while ago. Where my spoon going? Still waiting on the potatoes to get to boiling. There might be a special Thanksgiving edition. It might be on Thanksgiving, or it might be like Black Friday with, what am I doing with this entire pile of turkey meat? Because let's face it, by the time you're done Thanksgiving, there's still a plate of turkey, and you have no idea what to do with it. So... And even if you don't have a pile of turkey, you've got a pile of something, unless it's pizza. And if you guys don't know what to do with pizza that you ordered for Thanksgiving, I can't help you. That's like, I can't help you. Let's see. I'm going to check in on the roast, actually. Where is any of my pot holders? Okay. It's distinctly getting closer. Yeah, sandwiches work like the first 3 days, but then you're like, I still have an entire plate of chicken. Because, you know, what could possibly happen if you ever ran out of turkey on Thanksgiving, like, it's the end of the world. Yeah, but then we'd plan for you. And we'd be like, oh, we need to buy an even bigger turkey. And then we'd be back at square one. Now, unfortunately, I don't have smell-o-vision because you guys, the broccoli smells amazing. I don't know why broccoli smells so good when it's roasting, but it really does. I'm going to put the first couple of these guys away. start with, I think I can fit two in a container. So I'll put these 2 in so I can take them on Monday and Tuesday. And these other 3 I'm going to wrap up in saran wrap and put them in the fridge. And then I'll refill my dish later in the week. Expensive mustard, but what about like salsa? A little guacamole. Because I don't really have any expensive mustard to give you. Let's see where, there it is. This saran wrap came with like this fancy cutter thing. It's supposed to help you out. All I end up doing is swearing at it when it doesn't work. Not great. So these guys can go in the fridge. Come on, potatoes. They might, but the garlic in the broccoli unlocks the garlic. I don't even know what those are. But the garlic goodness in garlic. So like the fancy Dijon mustard. Or the other one that comes in the really expensive bottle. Okay. I'm actually going to pull this forward. If I can make this. Okay. Pork. Okay. It's pretty darn tender. Okay, let me actually turn that heat off for a minute. Pull this roast onto a plate. I've learned my lesson. I don't use my yellow plate when I'm doing this, because the yellow plate looks like radioactive mustard on the camera. And I don't really want radioactive mustard. And now for this last one. Cornstarch, some water. So basically I'm going to pour about half of this in. I want to make sure it gets thick but not too thick. And then from there, add more or less. Well, I can't add less, so add more. braised. So basically the water level came up to about 2/3 of the way, but I'm not using water. I'm using, in this case, coffee and chicken stock. Um, and I browned it beforehand, so that way it got some nice crust on the outside. That's going to need the rest of this. So what I'm going to actually do with this is going to cool down. The steak I'm going to cut up and then cool down. And the mashed potatoes, when they're all done, I'm going to let them all cool down. And that way when I put them together in the pan, the gravy doesn't immediately soak into everything. And so when I reheat it later, it's not dry as can be. And hello, how are you doing? Whoop. Drop that. You know what? I want a little more cornstarch in there. Oh, another spoon. I keep using new spoons for everything, and then on Sunday night I'm like, wow, it looks like I used 25 spoons. What was I doing? Oops. Not too bad. I am most of the way through finishing up meal prep for the week. You can see I've got a roast here that was braised in coffee and broth. I've got a pot pie in the oven, and I have broccoli roasting in the oven. And that far pan is potatoes that are getting ready to turn into mashed potatoes. Oh, and I have breakfast in the fridge already too. Yeah, that is true. Stop here. See how that does. Broccoli's close. A little tiny bit more. So this is just salt, pepper, garlic, a little oil. Last time I did some cayenne pepper. If I was doing it with a less, I don't want to say spicy because spicy is not the right word for a coffee dish. It's a little bitter. If I was doing something that was less spicy, I'd put cayenne pepper in as well. All right, there we go. That's what I'm looking for. So it just kind of sticks to the spoon and slowly dribbles off. Turn that heat off. Back this up. I'm going to need that spot in a few minutes. Potatoes are still doing potato things. Give the broccoli one more minute. Don't want to rush it. So, oh, I can do that. There it is. Down to my last cutting board, which is good because I'm almost done with today. Rinse that potato off this knife. Now I'll slice this up. Okay, really thin. I think it reheats better that way. Obviously, the sharper your knife is, the easier this goes. So you can see pieces are kind of falling apart. That's what I'm looking for. Actually. The good part of being a chef is you get to taste everything as much as you want. Bad part about being a chef sometimes is you've got to then clean up all the dishes from everything you made. I have to say, I think you might be waiting a while for pork to go really on sale again. Everything I hear keeps saying that all this stuff that's happening in China with the swine flu, not swine, whatever it's called, has put some real hamper in the ability of people to grow pigs over there. So, that's a great rule. There's only one problem I have with it, and I live alone, so if I don't do the dishes, they just don't get done. I kind of wish I could have that rule, but you know, doesn't work. Alright, spread these potatoes around. Oh yeah. So the broccoli looks nice. It's roasted. So make sure these are all loose. I'm going to actually take this off stage left because I have very little space in here. And I'll let it cool off under a fan. Sure. Okay, and the pot pie was almost done as well, so give that, I'm going to put a timer back on for 5 minutes. I'll pull that one out, and then I'll hopefully have the potatoes ready to mash. Not quite. So, I'll leave the steak out. People can see the steak. Actually, do I have? I've got enough pot holders. Get this gravy out of the way. Okay. China actually grows more than half of the world's pigs. I guess raises half of the world's pigs. Um, so if they don't, if they have a deficit, like the entire world can't supply enough pork, even if all of us gave up eating it for them. So what's been happening is China's been buying the pork from South America, Europe's been buying the pork from North America. Everyone's been buying pork from everywhere else because there is a shortage globally speaking. That doesn't necessarily show what's happening in your particular state or country, but that globally speaking there is a shortage. Okay. Oh yeah. This looks good. Put that out. I'm gonna let that sit on the camera because it looks really good. So what I'm gonna do with this is I'm gonna actually let it cool, and then I'm gonna cut the top in quarters, peel the top off, and put that in my microwave dishes so that way I get a good chunk on the top like I baked them in them, except I didn't worry about the glass somehow shattering or exploding. And I am just now waiting on mashed potatoes. Okay, I don't need any of these. I don't really need this either. Let's see. Guy out of the way. Okay, now my potato masher. I guess here's as good a time as any. If you are watching this and you enjoy it and the heart at the top of your screen that says follow is not filled, I would love if you would hit the follow button. You can definitely turn off all of your notifications, but that way if you see me online you'll know that I'm cooking more food and you can come back and watch it. And if it is already full, I thank you much. Okay. Cut these in quarters. Not yet. Oh yeah, that was to tell me to take that out. Well, I did that already. And as always, if you look at the bottom of the screen here, or if you scroll down, there is a link to a Discord. That Discord has all the recipes from every week. So if you like what you saw, you can go and make it yourself. Oh, I don't know. It came from my grandmother, so it's definitely old. It's high quality. The one I saw in Macy's, it looked kind of like it was like $50. So, high-end potato masher. my hardest part is being patient for potatoes. Everything else is actually cooked and prepped and ready to go. If that broccoli cools down the next couple minutes, I will take it and get it into dishes. And then I'll get this meat in there, and then we'll be ready for the mashed potatoes. Well, this is cooler, so I can, I'll just do that. Always have to do a little kitchen Jenga. If only I had a kitchen the entire size of my apartment. This one. Hey. It's very important to taste test your food, guys. Make sure it tastes good. Okay. Fork. Mm. 2 more minutes. Went through the first 2, but not the third potato. And then I'll just have to split this meat in quarters. And go from there. Well, let's see, can I actually lift these? Oh, good. What I'm going to try and do with these 4 cat pieces is I'm going to lift them off the pot pie base, put them on the lid of the dish, and then scoop the guts inside. So that way when you reheat it, it looks like I made it the right way the first time. Right now they look like they're coming off. Okay. Fork. Of all the things, I am not used to potatoes being the one to hold me up. So I'm going to strain these out. Hopefully not over myself. Okay, drop these back in the pan. Add in a stack of butter. Yes. If I had regular milk, I would use milk. I don't, but I do have half and half, so I'm going to use some half and half. Now, obviously, depending on how chunky you like your mashed potatoes, stop whenever you'd like. I like them pretty smooth, so I'm going to go pretty far. All right, and there we go. So off to the side, another big spoon, pot holder, some mashed potatoes. If I have a little extra here, oh darn, I'm going to be forced to eat more mashed potatoes, said no one ever. Then this little piece in here. So now some of this nice roast beef. This was a 2 1/3 pound roast to start with, so this is probably between 1 3/4 pounds and 2 pounds of finalized product. So that gives you about a 6-ounce portion per person, which is nice, or in my case, per lunch. Let's see. A couple more. Last one. Okay. How to make sure it tastes good. And last but not least, we have that gravy. And the reason there's a little well in those potatoes is so that way the gravy will stay with them. Okay, get the lids on these guys. So a little bit of work still. Once that dish cools down and I can actually flip those lids off, flip the crust off, I'll be able to put the other dish away, but I don't want to burn my hands off, so I won't. But with that, I now have 8 either lunches or dinners for the week, and 5 breakfasts. So, it was wonderful having you all in my kitchen, and I hope to see you again next week. Have a wonderful day.